Okay, after a long, protracted battle, I finally got the battery out of the car. The bolts on the bracket were much further down in this car than in the last one, so I had to order a socket wrench set in order to get down to where that bracket was. I tried to do it the other day with a wrench, but that space is just too small. Ended up with a massive bruise on my arm, like scratches all over my wrist. Anyway, so I'm gonna go upstairs and I'm gonna charge it now and hope that that's that. Hello everyone, it's Sunday morning. I sort of gave up on trying to write because I realized that I'd missed a deadline for a submission. So the story I was working on, I've just kind of put it on the shelf and I decided to demold resin instead. I'll probably do a bit more resin in a minute because it seems to be a pretty good way to sort of just chill out and kind of de-stress a little bit. So I'm gonna go do that. Change my hoodie first because I don't want to get resin on this one. I'm also going to change my glasses. friends, and happy Wednesday. No, it's Tuesday. Hello friends and happy Tuesday. I just got this in the mail. You might be wondering what the heck this is. I ordered resin in a larger quantity from a different company. This is supposed to be a pretty good company, and it's much cheaper than ordering it in the smaller quantities off Amazon or, you know, the kits from other craft supply places. So I'm gonna see how much I ordered, or like, I know how much I ordered. I'm gonna see what it looks like. So here we go. Heavier than I thought. Okay, so this is how it comes packaged. Part A and part B. You might be wondering why there's so much more of one than the other. That's because this particular resin is a 2-to-1 ratio. So I use 2 parts of part A to 1 part of part B. I won't be opening this up today because I do still have a little bit of resin left from a kit that a friend sent me. He tried resin and it didn't really work out for him, so he sent me the rest of his supplies, which was very nice. So I'm going to get through the rest of that before I start in on this, but I am very excited to try it out. And I'm just going to show you what I was working on yesterday. So you saw me working on this. It looks like it did what I wanted it to do, but it's going to be hard to know until we demold it entirely. So today I have to do the back. So this is the bottom of this box, and then I have to do the lid, which is around here somewhere. So I have to do that. Probably a bit later. I have some yarn to dye and some work to do first. And then these are multi-layer coasters I've been working on. I watched a little tutorial on how to do galaxy effect coasters. I didn't have a bunch of the supplies that they were using in this video, so I'm kind of winging it, but I think it's looking pretty good so far. So both of these now need a clear coat on top to level it out and finish it off. But I think that those are looking really cool. And then I will show you, I'm going to show you the demolding of yesterday's buttons. So these buttons from yesterday, they used purple, like a neon purple alcohol ink, and black glitter. A little bit of extra. There's the largest one. I think that looks pretty good. I'm working on getting my buttons more even, and I'm trying to make sure that they don't end up with air bubbles, which is easier easier sometimes rather than other times. But these are all looking pretty good so far. Just a little bit of extra, it's okay. This one will need a little bit of trimming. Those extra bits are a bit too much. And this one, I don't think the holes go all the way through, or do they? Oop. No, they do. Okay, crisis averted. Sometimes if you overfill the molds, you end up with buttons that can't be used as buttons because the holes don't go all the way through. Which is no button at all. So that's the buttons from yesterday. I made them all the same. And that's what they look like. I'm pretty pleased with that. A lot of times I sort of fill up the button mold with what I have left at the end of whatever larger project I'm working on, because I only have the one button mold right now. And I was trying to do this yesterday because I got a different kind of alcohol ink that's meant to sink the other inks further down, and I kept watching it and then got paranoid that it wasn't sinking, so I added more ink and more white and more ink. So now instead of what I was going for, it looks kind of colored all the way around. I think that it's still gonna look cool. We'll see when I'm done. after I pour the bottom of it. We'll see how it turns out. And it might take me a few tries to really get the hang of it with this. Anyway, I'm gonna go and dye some yarn. Yay! Hello everyone and welcome to Wednesday. I treated myself to a slightly nicer breakfast than I would normally have on a weekday. I don't know, I've just been having kind of like a weird kind of crabby week emotionally. So I was like, maybe if I start my day with some, well, here it's called egg in a basket. I grew up with it being called toad in a hole, which is something entirely different in the UK. I was shook by the difference once I figured that out. Anyway, I'm going to show you demolding of some of this stuff today. And then I'm also going to show you something very, I don't know, I'm excited to do it, but I'm also like pretty terrified. So not terrified is the wrong word. Apprehensive is the right word. Anyway, so I'm going to show you the demolding of the stuff that I worked on yesterday. So I'm most excited to demold this, so I'm going to do that one last because I'm kind of afraid. The last time that I made an attempt to do this, it did not turn out well. So we're going to see how that goes. So I'm going to start with these coasters, which are stuck to this. This is just a lid, a storage lid. So this was my attempt at a galaxy coaster. However, you can see an enormous air bubble, and I don't know how that happened because you saw me using the heat gun, and that was actually the first time yesterday that I've ever used the heat gun. I only got it last week, which is supposed to help get rid of bubbles. And there's not really that many other bubbles, but these, oh God, there's one over here too. So I don't know where these two bubbles came from. I popped that one when it was still wet. I did not do this one though, and so you can sort of hear it. Has a weird texture to it. So I don't know how that happened, but that's irritating. I could try to fix it, maybe, but I'm not very good at fixing things, so I'm just gonna go ahead and demold it and see how it looks. So I made a couple of mistakes here, in that I'm not very good at planning my layers yet. So this was the first layer, so that's basically supposed to be like the inside of the coaster that your drink sits in. And as you can see, there's tons of air bubbles in here because I did this before I got the heat gun, because this has been sitting around for a little while. So you can see there all the air bubbles, and then did the fun part on the back, but the fun part also has the air bubbles. So I'm going to trim the sides off of this with some craft clippers. Sorry, I just have to reach over to grab that. Also known as wire cutters. I don't know, just whatever you happen to be using it for. So I'm just gonna kind of snip around the sides. Don't worry, I am wearing eye protection, for those of you who are worried when you saw that piece go flying.
Yeah, so you can see that does leave kind of a jagged edge. I will have to like sand it down. But like, it's fine. It's a functional coaster. I have learned an important lesson on layering, and I imagine that this one is going to be roughly the same sort of thing, although there aren't big fat air bubbles on this one. There is a couple of things. I don't know what that is. It's not an air bubble. It's maybe a piece of dust or something got into it. So here's this coaster. I think this one turned out a little bit more exciting than this one. Well, I guess when you hold it up to the light, you can sort of see it. I think that this one turned out better. There's no big air bubbles on the back, making it an uneven surface. However, this one did take a lot more resin than I thought it would. Which is why if you're gonna buy handmade resin coasters from somebody, you know, on Etsy or Instagram or whatever, and you might think, wow, why are those coasters so expensive? It's because it takes a lot of resin, actually, and resin's not actually that cheap. It's not cheap at all. It's an expensive hobby to undertake between all the PPE you need and the resin itself, and you know, all the molds and everything. Like it adds up fast. I am learning. This is probably the most that I've spent on a hobby not related to business expenditures, maybe ever. I mean, I'm not blowing like, you know, thousands or anything. It's nothing like that. My hobbies are all pretty like cheap, I guess. So yeah, I think that turned out pretty well. It's a nice functional coaster. You can sort of see part of the galaxy thing behind it. Obviously now I know. The tutorial that I had watched, I now realize was done on coasters that came from a different mold. So the coasters that they did weren't an upside down mold. Theirs were just like a normal, like a face up mold. So it didn't have this like lip on the inside. It was just flat. So they were able to do the fun galaxy part as part of later layers like I did. I just wasn't paying attention. So I had a bit of extra yesterday. So I did some more of these little lightning bolts with the, I used black mica powder. You get more of an opaque result with mica powders than you do with the alcohol inks. The alcohol inks are, like here I used black alcohol ink and it's still pretty translucent, but these are pretty opaque. So I'm making these. A lot of people use these for like, you know, earrings or whatever, but I have been making them to use as like photography fillers for the next book I have coming out at the end of next month, because the title is Storm Signal. That's why I got these little lightning bolts, little stars. I have a feeling that these little stars especially would make like cute counters with tabletop gaming. And that's probably what I'm going to use them for. And I have this again for the book, the lightning bolt for the book launch. It's a stray piece of glitter here. So I did use the heat gun on these, because you can see there are still air bubbles there that have taken some bites out of the side of the heart. I am still working on the best way to get rid of air bubbles. I have looked into getting a pressure pot. They're very expensive and they're kind of big, which is why I haven't done it yet. Because you also need, basically you can either use a vacuum chamber to vacuum the bubbles out, but it takes a lot more finesse. Or you can use a pressure pot, but then you need an air compressor, and those are kind of loud as well, and I don't know that I have room for that right now, but I am definitely thinking about it a lot for the future. I'll do the stars next, which I use this really chunky glitter that I laid into the mold to try and control it a little bit more. Don't know how well that worked. This is just like a learning experience, you know? Wow, this one's got some big, like, holes, bubble holes in it. So that was face down. So that bubble was at the bottom of the mold and didn't make it out. And I'm almost wondering if the heat made the bubbles like bigger, so instead of having tiny bubbles, you ended up with like a few larger ones, and maybe that's what happened. Yesterday was the first time I used a heat gun, so anyway, you might be wondering what these little stars are for. I've probably seen me make little moons as well. I am planning to do like a, not a mobile, but like a twirly garland thing, and I'm going to like have it all glued to like ribbons and strings at different lengths to hang behind my desk, maybe. Or above the bed, maybe. But I'm getting a bunch of them before I actually assemble all of it. All right, I'll do the buttons now. I love the sound that these make. So I just put some stars at the bottom of these buttons. Again, with the air bubbles, though, you can see they've taken some chunkies out. That one as well. That one turned out okay, though. Like, they're all still functional buttons. They will get used at some point. But yeah, I am still working on getting on like reliably not having air bubbles be a problem. It is harder to get the chunkier glitters into the smaller buttons. And I had a little bit of overspill there. That one would need some sanding, which I don't really enjoy. I don't enjoy the sanding part of the process. So that was yesterday's buttons. I don't like these as much as I've liked some of the other ones that I've done this week. I think my favorite ones that I've done this week are maybe those, the ones that I used black mica powder and the green glitter laid into the mold. Those were probably my favorites from earlier in the video. Anyway, so those are the buttons that I made yesterday. I don't know how I feel about using the stars as the main glitter. I feel like it looks a bit uneven, and if I wanted it to look more even, I'd have to be very precise. So, not my favorites, but that's okay. Everything is a learning experience. Alright. I am gonna demold this now, which I'm like low-key terrified about, because the last time I did it, it was a disaster. So I'm gonna go ahead and do it. There was definitely some overspill here. I think that the surface I had it on wasn't entirely level. Oh my gosh. Pretty rad. Okay. So there was definitely some overspill on the bottom here. And you can see the glitter on the sides. So basically, this was supposed to just be, like, look at all those bubbles there. It's fine. It's cured correctly. And it doesn't go all the way... Does it go all the way through? No. So obviously I do have room for improvement there. So basically this was an idea that I saw on YouTube, and theirs obviously looks much better. This is the first time that I've gotten this particular method to work, where basically you use alcohol inks and then you sink them by using a white ink on top. The first time that I tried it, the white alcohol ink that I was using wasn't heavy enough, so I had to ask in a couple of resin groups what they suggested. And it was a different brand of alcohol ink that they suggested, and they said that a lot of alcohol inks, the white ones, while slightly heavier than the other inks, they aren't heavy enough to sink it. So there's the original inspiration had like big droplets, like a big sort of artful droplet, but when I was watching this start to cure, or not start to cure, but when I was watching it after I did it, I was worried that it wasn't dripping enough, so I added more ink, but now I see that I probably didn't need to do that. But it still turned out really cool. I'm still really pleased with this as a thing, even though there's like, you can see all the little bubbles there. I did not use the heat gun when I was doing this because I was worried that I would blow, because it's hot air that comes out of a heat gun, and I was worried that it would mess with the colors. So I don't know if there's maybe a better way to deal with that. But that's another reason why I'm like, a pressure pot would probably make things easier. Anyway, so obviously this is not like, this wouldn't be sellable quality, but I'm still learning. This is the first time that I ever tried this, but I'm still pretty happy. I still think that that looks really cool. Get this sort of like neon look. And that wasn't in the initial one, wasn't in the inspiration one either. That was just me, like I said, using too much ink. So I'm pretty happy with that, actually. Now I'll do the lid. I just made the lid black with mica powder. There you go. I am pretty happy with that, even though it didn't turn out quite how I wanted it to. And you can see here that there's some bubbles here on the lid. And I've read that lids can be a bit fiddly because the air and bubbles get trapped under this little lip here, which is, you may have seen me yesterday when I was doing stuff trying to poke the air bubbles out. But no, I'm pretty happy with that. Not perfect, not how I had necessarily envisioned it, and there's air bubbles and like, yeah, it's air bubbles on the bottom here. Not how I envisioned it, but I still think that it looks really cool. I'm gonna put stuff in there. Anyway, so that is today's demolding done. Oh no, I forgot the little knife. Again, this is like a photography prop idea. And you can see the tiny air bubbles there. Air bubbles are going to be my constant annoyance as I work at getting better. But that's okay, because nothing goes to waste. The stuff that I decide I don't like has gone into a little bucket. And I was watching some really cool videos on how you can basically use a hammer to smash it, and then you use it as like flakes to use, like as like debris to use in other projects, and it can be very effective, especially in some of the more like geological looking things. Anyway, so that's demolding for today. That was really long. Apprehensive about. So I haven't worn this sweater in like 2 years. I'm not comfortable wearing it anymore for a variety of reasons. So I haven't worn it for a long time, and it's just been hanging up in my closet, not doing anything. And like, y'all, this is 4-ply. It took me like a million years to knit. You might have just seen that hole. That is where I caught it when I was trying to pull it out of the closet, and it got caught on a screw. Much to my disappointment. So I do need to mend that. But I'm going to overdye it. I'm going to overdye the colorwork portion so that you can't see it anymore. I'm going to dye it black, and we're going to see how it looks when it's done. I know a lot of people have suggested, or probably like screaming right now, just frog it out, but like, it's 4-ply. It took me a million years to knit it. I don't want to frog it out. And honestly, I wouldn't end up using this yarn again. I straight up would not. So me frogging it out is not going to do anything, but me overdying it might mean that I wear it again. So I'm going to overdye it, especially up here. I'm going to overdye this so that it is hopefully unrecognizable, but we'll see. It's going to take some super saturated black dye, but I'm here for the challenge. That's not a hole. That is an error that I made while knitting it like 4 years ago. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So this is what it looks like after one tangle with with the black dye. You can still sort of see the pattern, so I'm gonna put it in again. Also, I put it in the spin dryer thinking that it would be fine because there was a bunch of other stuff in there and it wouldn't move around much, but it definitely caught a strand and yanked it right on out, so I'm gonna have to secure those down. Anyway, it's looking pretty good so far, I think. It's definitely harder to see the pattern. I mean, I suppose maybe I can see it more because I know, or what it originally looked like, not supposed to, what it originally looked like, but there's still some splodges of green that I think I need to go in and, okay, I've given it another dunk. Don't worry about the holes. I'm going to fix those. After I'm done dyeing, I'm going to not put it in the spin dryer next time. I know some of you are probably thinking, spin dryer, are you nuts? But I use a spin dryer for yarn every day, and it is totally a non-issue. Most indie dyers use spin dryers. I feel like maybe this was just not up to the task. Anyway, so I'm about to strap my respirator back on, and you can see I already have my gloves on because I was dunking it down in the acid water. I'm gonna put my respirator back on, and then I'm gonna try and hit some of these green splodges with some direct dye, and see how that looks. See how we get. Hello again, yarnivores and crafty folks. You're probably wondering why I'm showing you this and not what I was dyeing yesterday, but that's because it is still in the heated air. It's not quite dry yet. And it's not quite dry yet because I had it out for a long time last night fixing the holes that the spin dryer put in. Anyway, so this is a sweater that I've been working on for a little while. This is the Easy Bulky one by Joji Locatelli. This is with the Halloween Fade Pack. It doesn't look as vibrant as some of the other bases from that set do. This is a new base that I'm trialing. It is Yak and Superwash Merino in a chunky plied weight. I really like how the yarn dyed up. I'm really liking how the fade is looking. I got through this skein yesterday, so I have to wind up the last one tonight, and I also have another one that's for the sleeves, which I will do after. It has been a pretty, like, the setup for it is a little bit it's a little bit different than something I've done before, but after you get the setup done, it's just plain knitting, but because it's in a chunky weight, it's not so bad. Anyway, I basically have only done packaging orders today. Blanket clubs are going out tomorrow, so I packed up, I don't know, probably about 70 orders today, which may not sound like a lot, but it definitely feels like a lot. And I'm not showing you my head and my face because I actually have dye in my hair, which I will be rinsing out soon. Anyway, so my plan for the evening is going to be to wind up the yarn, do some knitting on this, and then take a long hot shower and rinse the dye out of my hair. That looks a lot browner than it does in real life. In real life, it definitely has more purple. And that's my plan for the evening. And then I will be back. Well, I have to get up early tomorrow morning to hit the Post Depot. And then I will be back to show you lovely people that colorwork sweater that I overdyed yesterday and bid you all a fond farewell until the next vlog. Anyway, I will see you in the morning. Hello everyone and welcome to Friday. It is, I don't know what time it is. We've already been up and taken all the packages into town and come back and had some breakfast. So it is still relatively early-ish in the morning, but not mega ultra early in the morning. Anyway, I wanted to show you all the finished results of me overdying that colorwork sweater. And I'm wearing it, so I'm going to do a bit of a slow motion backup so you can see how good it turned out. Sorry, this is my Look how good it turned out. I'm actually super pleased with how this turned out. I was a little bit scared when I decided to overdye it, but I think it turned out great. I did have to spend some time, not last night, but the night before, repairing some of the holes that the spin dryer put in. And upon further reflection, I think that a couple of those were actually drop stitches from when I originally knitted it, but I guess I must have been very gentle when wearing it because they hadn't laddered down at all. And that doesn't surprise me because when I was sitting, the last time I wore this was about 2 years ago, and I was in Italy for some citizenship requirement stuff. And I remember I was sitting in a meeting and I looked down and I saw a stitch like laddering down the side, and I had to pull a hairpin out to catch the stitch. So it could have just been a couple like that, but the big hole that was on the collar, that was caused by the spin dryer. So that was my own silly fault, and lesson definitely learned there. And I'm not going to give you a close-up of my repairs because my repairs are really ugly and they are not satisfying like those really nice Instagram videos where people do the really beautiful duplicate stitch to fix holes. But also because I couldn't find my yarn needle, so I had to fix stuff with a crochet hook, so it's not pretty. I probably will at some point end up, you know, going back in and prettying it up, maybe with a contrast color for some bit of visible mending, which I think might kind of be a bit fun and funky. I'm really pleased. I think that this possibly could not have turned out any better. You can still see a little bit of the purple poking through, but not enough that it's very recognizable. And I think that if I stand kind of here, you can't tell that there's purple at all, and you can't see at all that there's a pattern. I'm really pleased because this is, it took a long time for me to knit this. I talk a lot about how I'm a slow knitter, and I am just a slow knitter, and I'm okay with that, but it means that when I have something that's a 4-ply sweater, I'm not going to be super keen to frog it all out. So I'm really pleased that overdyeing worked really well for me. I hope that if you have a sweater that you just don't like anymore, or you're uncomfortable wearing for any variety of reasons, I hope that you have a bit of inspiration maybe to do a little bit of an overdye. Obviously, as you can see, I kept it as kind of a fade. I wasn't very specific about trying to perfectly make that happen. I was just kind of like throwing some black dye in at the top and hoping that it all worked out. And I think that it looks I think it looks great. I almost think that I like it more. I do like it more. I like it more now. I like it more now than I did with the colorwork jumper. So this is going to go back into my knitwear rotation, and I'm really pleased about that. Today is actually a beautiful day for wearing a sweater like this because it's nice and crisp outside. Under different circumstances, I would go for a walk in the woods, but I'm not going to do that. So what I am going to do is I have 2 big, like, those pop-up laundry baskets size things of yarn that needs to get labeled and put away. So that is going to be my nemesis today, is trying to get caught up on all of the labeling and filing. And I'm probably going to do a resin pour. I haven't done one for the last couple of days. And I know that I showed you a lot of resin this week. I don't actually do that much resin normally. Like, usually I do only do it maybe once or twice a week, but it's been a fun coping mechanism lately. And I have gotten some fun new stuff, and I'm just kind of experimenting and figuring out the kind of stuff that I like best. I've been watching a lot of resin videos on Instagram and on TikTok to get kind of some inspiration and kind of learn some new techniques. I've been watching tons of YouTube videos on different techniques, and I have some ideas. I'm just bursting with ideas, and honestly, resin has captured my attention in a way that I always hoped that spinning would, because obviously spinning is more closely related to what I actually do for business. And I have the very first electric eel wheel, miniature spinning wheel, and I have fiber, and I just never really got into it. It's not something that comes naturally to me, and yeah, I don't know, it just didn't capture me the way that this has, and so I'm just gonna kind of ride this craft wave as far as I can take it. Anyway, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed my crafty exploits this week and seeing me overdye a colorwork sweater. I hope that you feel inspired. I hope that you feel, I don't know, I hope that you have a wonderful Friday and a wonderful weekend, and please do like and subscribe and drop me a comment down below, again, to help us defeat the algorithm dragon. Our last deep dive on Instagram algorithms did not perform as well as the other deep dives. I wonder why that could be. So if you haven't seen that, definitely go and take a look. It did take a lot of research and effort to put it together, so I do hope that a few more people will see it. Anyway, that is all from me this week, and next week we will be doing an attempted nerder video. Next week we are going to be looking at some tie-dye, like upcycling clothing with tie-dye. And I know you think that might be a bit cheating because I am an indie dyer, but tie-dye is a completely different beast, and I promise you that, and I will explain all next week, so please do tune in for that, and I will see you all next week.